She can't help herself. I'm telling you, she just can't help herself. It has become a disease at this point for Jemele Hill. Everything, I mean everything, must be viewed through the prism of race. Doesn't matter what it is, it could be something as simple as the loose change in her purse. How come there aren't any black faces on my change? This is racism. When Deion Sanders left the dump known as Jackson, Mississippi to go coach at a real football program in Colorado, Smelly Jemele basically accused him of selling out his own race. This is barbaric! Why is the black man leaving Jackson to go live amongst the white people in Colorado? I don't know, Jemele. Maybe Deion Sanders wanted to actually live in a city that provides running water. If you're so concerned about Jackson, Mississippi, why don't you go live there? I'd be willing to bet Jemele Hill never been to Jackson, Mississippi. All it would take is one visit for her to figure out why Deion Sanders got the hell out of there. Yesterday morning, I am scrolling through Twitter. Before, during, and after Saints and Pelicans games, I like to get on Twitter and Reddit just to check the pulse of the fan base. Now, I don't follow Jemele Hill on social media. Matter of fact, for the longest time, I had her blocked on Twitter. But since we discuss this race-obsessed bacteria on the channel from time to time, I had to unblock her so I could screenshot her propaganda for you guys. Now, even though I do not follow her, for some reason, Twitter constantly puts Jemele Hill in my timeline. The very first thing I see on Twitter yesterday morning is this tweet from Jemele Hill. Look at this white man. He loses his job and gets paid millions of dollars only in white America. How come marginalized groups don't get to fail up? The insinuation here is rather obvious and it's embarrassing. I guess Jemele Hill was the last one to get the memo. The business of mythical racism, it's bankrupt. But to her credit, Jemele Hill, she is desperately trying to keep the business of mythical racism alive. Now, I don't know anything about Texas A&M. I don't know why Jimbo Fisher was fired, and I really don't care. I haven't followed his career much, so I don't know if Jimbo Fisher has failed up throughout his career. It's entirely possible that Jemele Hill is right, but there are two things I know for certain. If Jimbo Fisher has failed up throughout his coaching career, it had absolutely nothing to do with his race. And number two, I can tell you with 100% certainty, Jemele Hill has failed up her entire media career. Not once, not twice, not even 3 times. Jemele Hill has failed up multiple times. I can also tell you with 100% certainty that every time Jemele Hill has failed up, it had everything to do with her race, because it damn sure had nothing to do with her talent or lack thereof. Outside of Bomani Jones, no one does failure like Jemele Hill. This woman is synonymous with failure. To be honest with you, when I post the poll for the upcoming Huge Embarrassing Failure Awards, I would not be surprised in the least if you guys crown Jemele Hill the biggest huge embarrassing failure. But since Jemele Hill wants to insinuate that Jimbo Fisher is a failure that is being benefited by his white privilege, I wanted to take a second this afternoon to highlight all the embarrassing failures of Jemele Hill. At the end of this video, you tell me who is failing up. You tell me who is the beneficiary of racial privilege. But before we get into all that, let's go ahead and get to the sponsor for today's video, my friends over at Bumroll. Now, there is something that every one of you guys are using every day that you never think about buying. Unless, of course, you find yourself in one of those traumatizing situations when you actually need it and you come to the frightening realization that you're out of it. We've all been there before. We finish up, we finally start to feel better, and then we realize we're out of toilet paper. But I've got some good news for you guys today. You never have to worry about running out of toilet paper again thanks to my friends at Bumroll. Now, don't let the name fool you. We are not talking about the same bums who work in WNBA dumps across America. Unlike the dump divers in the WNBA, Bumroll actually employs people who love America. Every roll of toilet paper is 100% manufactured here in America, made in the USA with American hands and American materials. Every roll 100% recycled, free of perfume, free of chlorine, free of plastic wrap, and if you purchase from Bumroll, you are guaranteeing to keep American jobs secure. Now, unlike the pretenders who claim to care about the environment, who lecture you on your usage of fossil fuels while they're flying around in private jets, Bumroll Bumroll actually cares about the environment. For every box of toilet paper sold, Bumroll makes a donation to plant a new tree. Now, you can make a one-time purchase or you can get set up on a monthly plan, which guarantees you will never run out of toilet paper again. Click the link in the description below or head over to joinbumroll.com right now. Use my promo code behind the line, to save $3 off your first shipment with Bumroll. All right, Jemele Hill, she is implying that Jimbo Fisher is failing up because of the benefit of white privilege. Well, Casey, she never said that. How can you come to that conclusion? Because this is Jemele Hill we're talking about. This is someone who believes everything is about race. If you don't believe me, go read her memoir on mythical racism. I promise you, you will not have trouble finding a copy. Last I checked, there were still thousands available. Jemele Hill, she began her on-screen career at ESPN back in 2013 on a show called Numbers Never Lie. Now, ESPN had to quickly rename the show. Executives, they thought the title was a bit hypocritical. Although numbers never lie, Jemele Hill always does. ESPN renamed the show His and Hers. They slotted the show directly after First Take. Now, you gotta remember, this was during a time when First Take was drawing monster ratings at ESPN. You couldn't ask for a better lead-in if you're Jemele Hill. I mean, they were handing her 8, sometimes 900,000 viewers. The problem is Jemele Hill couldn't maintain them. After a couple of years, ESPN realized the show would never eclipse the status of being a huge embarrassing failure, so they canceled the show. But that's okay. Because ESPN, they had big plans for Smelly Jemele. Instead of doing what most TV networks do with failing, untalented people, fire them, ESPN decided to give Jemele Hill a promotion. The 6 p.m. edition of SportsCenter. It's always been considered the flagship show at ESPN. I'm pretty sure the 6 o'clock edition of SportsCenter was the very first show to be broadcast on the network. Simply put, it's an important show. 2017. ESPN renames the 6 o'clock edition of SportsCenter SC6. They paired Jemele with the super nerd Michael Smith. What could go wrong? Smelly Jemele, she had big plans for SC6. Instead of the show being dedicated to covering sports, Jemele Hill, she wanted to talk about politics and mythical racism. In a few short months, the bacteria managed to alienate half the audience, and that is not hyperbole. Ratings dropped over 40%. After Jemele Hill called Donald Trump a white supremacist, executives at ESPN, they finally had enough and they fired her. ESPN wanted to get rid of Jemele Hill so badly, they paid her millions of dollars just to go away. And by the way, has anyone ever met a white supremacist? I've been alive for 38 years, almost 39 years this month. I have encountered thousands and thousands of people in my lifetime. Not one time have I ever met a white supremacist. But for those counting at home, by 2017, Jemele Hill was a 2-time embarrassing failure in the mainstream media. But that's okay. Smelly Jemele, she was able to leverage her privilege and landed a job at Vice. She called up her sister in woke Carrie Champion and asked if she would like to earn money that she doesn't have to earn. Here on the channel, we like to call that woke welfare. Jemele Hill, she prefers to call it reparations. They launch a show on Vice called Jemele and Carrie Wish They Were Named Larry. Now, expectations at Vice for this show were very, very low. When I say expectations were low, I mean there were none. All Smelly and Carrie had to do was make the top 200 in the ratings on cable. I mean, that's not very hard. Hell, even the originator of the huge embarrassing failure, Bomani Jones, he was able to make the top 200 once or twice. Smelly and Carrie never made the charts. Once again, Jemele Hill was paid a lot of money to not draw an audience. At this point, Jemele Hill is a 3-time huge embarrassing failure in the mainstream media. But again, that's okay. Bomani Jones had 37 years of failure at the time, so Jemele Hill, she had plenty of catching up to do. After Vice cancels the show and paid Jemele Hill to never contact them again, she decided to reach out to Spotify. Now, at the time, Spotify was looking to focus on black female voices. They paid Jemele Hill hundreds of thousands of dollars to create something called the Always Bothered Podcast Network. The company, Spotify, they spent no telling how much money they spent advertising this show. In their infinite wisdom, they decide that the best way to entice people to listen to Jemele Hill was to put her face on billboards throughout New York City. I mean, seriously, who doesn't want to see this beautiful face on a giant billboard? Check it out for yourself. Spotify paid thousands of dollars to promote this brand of embarrassing failure on billboards throughout New York City. Unbothered network where black women are primary. Yeah, primarily unemployed. Now, I don't know where in the hell you can find those other unknown black women on that billboard today, but I know where you won't find them: Spotify. After years of promoting Jemele Hill on their front page, after years of spending thousands of dollars begging people to give Jemele a chance, Spotify finally decided to eliminate her woke welfare. In her 3 years on the platform, Jemele Hill rarely cracked the top 200. When Spotify made the announcement that they were firing Jemele Hill, there were a lot of people that were shocked by it. I mean, 99% of the American population didn't even realize that Jemele Hill had a podcast. But while she was failing on Spotify, CNN, they decided to launch a streaming service called CNN Plus. They decided to build the platform around some heavy hitters. They hire Rex Chapman. Who? They hire Chris Wallace. Who? And they round out this trio of huge embarrassing failures by hiring Jemele Hill, someone who has plenty of experience in the industry of embarrassing failure. CNN Plus, it only lasted 3 weeks, with Jemele Hill never appearing on the platform. I guess they should have centered the platform around Wolf Blitzer. Woof, woof. Now, of course, this latest failure, it didn't stop Jemele Hill from bragging on social media about collecting money from CNN that she didn't have to earn, which leads us to the worst book deal in the history of the publishing business. For some reason, Macmillan Publishers, they thought America was clamoring for an autobiography of Jemele Hill. Yeah, that's just what the country wants, an autobiography of someone we don't give a fuck about. Once again, Jemele Hill was paid in advance, and the company spent thousands of dollars promoting this memoir on mythical racism. The book was released 12 months ago. It has sold 5,000 copies. Finally, media companies, they have come to the realization that America rejects Jemele Hill. Since her latest failure, she has yet to be given another job in the mainstream media. Now, you tell me who has failed up. Like I said, it's entirely possible that Jimbo Fisher has failed up throughout his coaching career. But you know what? If I remember correctly, didn't Jimbo Fisher win a national championship at Florida State with Jameis Winston? I think he did. If so, this makes this tweet from Jemele Hill even more humiliating. At one point in his life, Jimbo Fisher was a proven winner. Throughout her media career, Jemele Hill has been a proven loser and a proven failure. Give me one example of Jemele Hill succeeding. Give me one example of Jemele Hill being a part of something that was successful. Go ahead. Wait, because it's never happened. But give me your thoughts on this. Jemele Hill claims Jimbo Fisher failed up after being fired from Texas A&M. Now, I believe the insinuation here was Jimbo Fisher was failing up due to his white privilege, when the reality is Jemele Hill is arguably the most privileged woman in the mainstream media. This woman constantly embarrasses herself on social media. Now, you would think after a while Jemele Hill would get tired of being embarrassed, but I guess she doesn't. Give me your thoughts on this. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate your support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.